Cole Cubelic of Cube Show. Cole, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So, Cole, we talk a lot about Tennessee football on our show, and you seem to know a lot about offensive linemen flipping positions. Yeah. Darnell Wright did it last year. We're hearing reports that Gerald Mincy is going to do it this year. What's significant about that tackle?
Well, it depends on where you're going. If you're going from guard to tackle, obviously your footwork, your sets are going to change. Your steps in the run game are going to be a little bit different. Center, obviously, to guard or tackle, you're not having a snap. Things are going to be different there. Now, going from left to right is different as well. Now, the good news for Tennessee is you're not in a three-point stance very often, so going from left to right wouldn't be as complicated. But still, mental weight is something that has to happen pre-snap. So if I'm a left tackle, my mental weight's on my right foot before I take my set. If I'm at right tackle, my mental weight's on my left leg before I take my set. Things like that, understanding where to carry your hands, how to carry your hands, weight distribution's a little bit different, but these kids are athletes, man. Like they understand, and if you get enough reps at it going in, it's not as big of a challenge with a heads up. Where it becomes a challenge, I think, is in the middle of the season. You get 2-3 guys hurt, and all of a sudden your right tackle's got to go to left tackle, or your left guard's got to go to right guard, and they haven't been repping it leading up to the season or during the season. That's when I think it really becomes complicated.
Yeah, I know Philip Fulmer's last season, Tennessee made the mistake of swapping guard positions in the middle of the game a lot of times.
See, that used to be normal. When I first got to Auburn, you had strong side, weak side. So if our strength was to the right guard, right tackle would go to the right side. If our strength was to the left, they would go to the left side. Folks flipped offensive lines for a long time. And then when tempo became a real part of playing offensive football, that's something that obviously took time. So you got rid of that. Then you had right tackle, right guard, left guard. And so now it's just a waste of time to do it. And so, but it used to be that you had, I guess the mindset was probably our best two are going to be our strong two. But yeah, that used to be the way it was.
Is in a tempo system like Josh Heupel's, I think the underrated part of his system is how much he relies on the run game. How important are the guards and the interior linemen for Josh Heupel to make his system work?
Yeah, I don't think he relies on the run game. I mean, I think they have an emphasis on they want to run the football. Like if they can go out and run the football 50 times and win a game, he's going to do it. And because I think that truly is what begins the pace. Like there are very few passes that lead them into tempo. Usually it's a run that leads them into being able to go fast. So the guards are huge. Like that's why I like watching Devontae Spraggins. He's a guy that finishes extremely well. Like he's got that extra desire up until or past the whistle. Like he plays the game the way it's supposed to be played. But it's all five of them, man. Like you can't run that offense or any offense and have great tackles in the run game and guards that are insufficient in the run game or a center that's insufficient. So I think all five spots are important. In the run game specifically for Tennessee, I would throw the tight end in as well. It's one of the things I thought that really separated them last year was not just how dominant the offensive line was, specifically Darnell, but the tight end inserts where they come in between the guard and tackle, or split zone where the tight end comes flat across the line of scrimmage. They did a lot of things to steal the eyes of defenders with the tight ends. So it's not even just the offensive line that helps with how successful they've been running the football.
What about when it comes to this system? How much does it take advantage of the leeway in downfield blocking that's now allowed in college football?
First and foremost, I think the biggest differentiator in this offense is spacing. It's not tempo. It's not shot plays. It's spacing. It's alignment. And what it does is when you have receivers that are literally a foot away from each sideline, it forces a defense to say, do we want our extra help to be over this group of receivers? You have two stacked receivers. Do I want a third defender out there because we don't think we can tackle them? Or do I want an extra defender in the box to play against the run? That's a conflict. And when you put a conflict like that, it immediately gives you an advantage. Because wherever – and you want to try to play us in the middle? Okay, cool. We're going to attack you as an unknown defender. So that, to me, is the biggest part of what makes this offense so difficult. Now, the downfield blocking aspect of it, I don't think that not being able to do that hinders or takes away from what this offense is. Are there some times maybe on a screen that it could be a little bit more beneficial? Yeah, but, I mean, it's just not going to the ground is all it is. So, I mean, you can still block downfield. You can still find work downfield as a receiver, a tight end, a back, an offensive lineman, whatever. But I do think it may take away a couple of explosives a year because let's be honest, receivers aren't good blockers. So the fact that they can't go low anymore downfield, or a back out of the backfield can't go low, and sometimes a lineman, because sometimes as a lineman, when you're out in space, you know good and well you're probably not going to actually square up a corner or a safety. Like, they're just quicker and faster than you. So if you can at least go low on them and get in the way and force them to retrack, that can still open up enough room to create an explosive play. And not being able to do that anymore, it might take an explosive or two away every 5 or 6 games, but I don't think it really ever slows the offense down.
So on a broader scale with the SEC, the two biggest questions I've heard this year so far are who wins the West, Alabama or LSU, and can Tennessee challenge Georgia at all in the East? So I want to ask you that latter one. Can Tennessee challenge Georgia at all, or is Georgia, do you think, is just too far ahead of them still?
I think it depends on your definition of challenge. Can they be close to the standings at the end of the season? Yes, absolutely. But I think there are just more losable games on the schedule for Tennessee than there are Georgia. Therefore, even if Tennessee found a way to upset Georgia, I might still give Georgia the advantage based on the differential between them and the teams on their schedule, as opposed to the differential between Tennessee and the teams on their schedule. So, Tennessee still has to play Georgia and Alabama. Georgia doesn't have to play Georgia and Alabama. They play Alabama. So or they play Tennessee. So I think the schedule differential, even if Tennessee gets that upset, it may actually still lean Georgia just because there are more difficult games on Tennessee's schedule.
And on the other side, LSU and Alabama, is LSU, would you say at this point they are on Alabama's level? Or do you think
LSU's the favorite in the West, in my opinion. They have a returning starting quarterback that we have confidence in. They're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the SEC. That's a part that people don't want to talk about for whatever reason, but you essentially have 6 starters back on that offensive line. Tight end returns. After Ohio State, I would put LSU's receiving core on par with anybody. Now, the league is really good at receiver depth-wise. Tennessee's group's going to be really good. Kentucky has the best receiver room they've ever had. Georgia's receiving group, especially when you include tight ends, is incredible. So I think there are some really deep receiving rooms in the league. Like, Alabama's depth at receiver is great. They just don't have the A++ guy that's already done it. But I think when you talk about a receiver room and just a group of like aliens or robots, like LSU's got that. And they might have the best defensive player in the league. They have maybe the best tandem of defensive tackles in the SEC. So there are a lot of reasons that, I think LSU, I would have them slightly ahead of Alabama. And it's not that Alabama can't do it, may not do it. There are many ways that they can. They got that game in Tuscaloosa this year. But Alabama's got Texas, man. Alabama's got Tennessee, Alabama's got Auburn on the schedule, which is a rivalry game that's always – I would lean LSU right now, but I do think it's a 2-team race in the West to actually win the division.
So last question before I let you out of here. So we've talked about Tennessee challenging Georgia and then Alabama, LSU. If there's one team that should be considered a possible shocker that could win the SEC out of those 4, or at least play for the title, who should it be?
Out of Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU?
Outside of those 4, not one of those 4 teams.
The only other team I think that could possibly win the SEC would be Texas A&M, and it's because of their roster. Their talent is as close to Georgia and Alabama and LSU as anybody else. Now, I think a team who could really surprise some people would be Kentucky. Like I just said, they have the best receiving room they've ever had. Now, I'm not saying they're better than Craig Yeast or better than Randall Cobb individually, but top to bottom, it's the best room they've had. And they have one real problem that needs to be repaired. That's offensive line. They brought multiple guys in to be able to fix that. I think Marquez Cox will start at left, Northern Illinois transfer. I think he'll be good. SEC fans don't appreciate Ray Davis because he played here. He played at Vanderbilt. He's really good. They don't appreciate Devin Leary because he played at NC State. Devin Leary was a top 3 quarterback in college 2 years ago. Like, the kid can play. He's good. You got Weaver back on the front of that defense. Oxendine's back up front on that defense. Brad White's a great defensive coordinator. That's a group. And the back end of their schedule is brutal, but they're going to get a lot of momentum early. I mean, they could easily be 5-0 playing Georgia. So Kentucky would be that team that could separate that I don't think many people are talking about.
He's Cole Cubelic with the Cube Show. This is SEC Media Days for Off the Hook Sports. This is Caleb Calhoun. Cole, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Caleb.